Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Coach Jess, and I am here with you for another Coach Art Facebook Live tutorial. Today we're going to be painting a watercolor flower garden. I'm super excited. This tutorial is really fun and really easy to do. I would love to give a disclaimer before we get started. You might hear some music in the background and maybe some people on a microphone. I live right beside a community park. And they're having a radio event right now. So I do apologize for any noise in the background, but it's not going to stop us from creating an awesome piece of artwork today. So if you'd like to follow along in order to recreate today's garden, you're going to need some watercolor paper, also some watercolor paints. So I just have these. They come in this little pan like this. They usually come bigger sometimes. You can also get them in tubes. Any type of watercolor paint that you have will work just fine. I'll also be using a paintbrush. It's just a regular round paintbrush. Looks similar to anything you'd usually find in a kit. It's really basic. And water, of course. So I just actually use my water bottle that I drink because I don't use a whole lot of water. You can also just grab a cup of water and a paper towel. It's going to be the last thing you'll need. So just a paper towel that you can keep on hand in order to wipe the paints and clean as we go through. So what I'm going to do now is change the view so you can see my desk and we can start painting together. All right. So I have a small sheet of watercolor paper here. Hi, Liz. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon. Hello, hello. And again, I really do apologize for the music in the background. But we're gonna have a great time painting. So I do have these colors here on the side. I'm gonna try and keep it so that you can see it. I'm just gonna mix the colors inside of this little plastic top here. Usually your watercolor paint pans come with like a plastic side and you can mix colors on there. If you don't want to mix colors, you also don't have to. I also pour my water in this, but if you have a water cup, you also won't need to do that. And these are just some things that way you know why I have these items out or why I'm using them the way that I am. Hi, Martha. Hello. It's good to see everyone. It's good to have you here with me. All right. So actually the first thing that I'm going to do is get a sheet of paper. It's like a spare sheet of paper. Actually, I might do my garden on this one here and then use this to test some colors. So I'm going to cut just a strip out. And this is so that I know what the colors are going to look like before I start using them. For anyone joining us recently, we're going to be painting a version of a garden. It's not going to look just like this. Of course, you can add any flowers, but I'm going to show you how to do different techniques for flowers, and that way you can choose your favorite ones. All right, so first things first, I'm going to grab my handy-dandy water bottle and pour some water into my top and just put it onto the side. Okay, I'm kind of just flooding my little plastic tube. This is acting just like a water cup for me. Nothing fancy. Put it in sight, that way we can all see. I have this little strip of paper here to test out my greens. That's the most important color for me. And I'm going to start by dipping my paintbrush in some water. And I'm going to start with the lightest green. I'm just going to go ahead and add water to loosen that pigment up, pick up some color, and then test it out. So that's what that green looks like. That's that second color green. And every time I go off camera, I'm just dipping my brush in some water and paper towel. That way I clean the color off before I go into the next one. I'm trying to capture just the variety of greens. The flower colors I don't really care for, but I want to make sure that I don't use the wrong shade of green. And it also just started pouring down, raining where I am. So the music might be done for the rest of the class, which will be awesome. The rest of the live, excuse me. And lastly, I have this brown color over here that I do like to use. It kind of reminds me of kind of like dirt, kind of earthy. I feel like there are some greenish tones to it, so I'm gonna add it onto my little color palette. Also, please bear with me if there are any lagging or if my internet cuts out a bit, because like I said, there is a huge storm that's passing through. I'm here on the East Coast. So yes. Okay, so we're gonna start. We have our colors, you can let that dry. We're actually gonna start with the ground. Now, when you're drawing the grass, you can kind of choose any color values that you really want. So you can use a brown, you can also use a green. I like to do a mix between like a brownish, grayish, maybe even a little bit of red just to kind of keep it fun and funky. But you can choose what works best for you or what you want your garden to look like. So I'm going to start with a little bit of gray, and I'm just going to create a light wash, a straight line across the bottom of my page. Like so. And if you were comfortable with that, you can leave it there. I'm actually going to go over top of it with a little bit, it's kind of like a burgundy color. I'm not really sure how to describe it. It has some red tones to it. But it's one of the closer colors to brown, other than this yellow here, or this greenish weird color, which I'm also going to add a little bit of. And I'm just trying to imitate that look of soil. But like I said, you can use any colors. You can just use green. If you have a pure brown pigment for paint too, that would be awesome and a great substitute. And I'm not going to add too much detail. I kind of want it to be really whimsical. If you want, you can paint the entire bottom portion of your page. But I kind of want it to look like a floating garden a little bit. So that's why I'm going to leave it just as it is. The next thing we're going to do is draw the stems for all of our flowers. So I like to do this first because then I can just add the petals and the different designs to each of them as I go. And it also helps me to not have to keep cleaning my brush or going back to similar colors frequently. So I'm just going to get all of my green colors out of the way. And I do like to choose a few different greens. So I have my green scale here. You can stick to one, you can stick to multiple. It's kind of up to you. So I'm going to go in with one of the darker greens. And I'm going to create a series of lines. The number of lines that you create will end up determining how many flowers you'd like. If you want, you can make some curved, right? So they don't all have to be the same way. You can give some of them little branch points, like that. And as I see the color fading, I'm just going to go back and pick up some more color on my brush. So it's a little bit darker. And again, these are just all basic lines. If you want, you can give some of them a little swirl, a little squiggle. You can add some shorter ones into the mix as well. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean my brush a little bit, and I'm going to go into that yellowy color right here, that kind of earthy color. I'm really not sure how to describe that color, I'm sorry. And I'm going to go over some of my lines just to give them a little bit more pizzazz and character. I feel like it helps to give the garden a little bit of a cooler look. You can do this with a lighter green if you want, or a different shade of green. And it just helps to make the plants look a little bit more multi-dimensional. And I'm going to also use my same brush and any green that I want. I think I'm going to stick to this darker green to make some leaves. So you can choose which stems you want to add the leaves to. But I'll show you how to do a few different types of leaves. And it's pretty easy using this round brush here. So I'm just going to pick up some color, go a little bit of water, pick up some color on my brush, and then I'm going to choose a plant. I'll just start with this one here, or a stem. And I'm going to lightly press onto the page and then bring that paint down. And it's going to create a shape that looks something similar to a leaf. You can always go back over it if you want to define it a little bit better. So that's my first leaf shape. They're kind of curvy, pretty fun. And again, I just start by pressing lightly onto the page and then swiping down and lifting up as I come to the actual stem. You might be able to hear how badly it's storming outside. It's kind of crazy. It was just sunny outside. Happy to be inside right now. Another set of leaves you can do would be the basic ones you usually see, where there are two kind of at the bottom or at the base of the plant. You can choose if you want to make these short or longer, so I'll do a few different examples on these three here. So for a basic short one, I'm just going to push down, make like a V shape. Also kind of looks like a heart. And that one is a little bit of a shorter design. I'm going to go back in and darken up this line here. Rinse off my brush a little bit. And I'm going to, just because I had mixed these colors before, oh, it's still kind of dark. Let me see. Try to pick up some of this yellow, this earthy color. As well. Okay, hopefully that's a good mix. So now what we're going to do is repeat this design, but we're going to make them a little bit bigger. So I'm going to start higher up this time and bring it down. Starting higher up, I'm just pushing lightly onto my brush and then bringing it back down. This one does have more of a curve to the V, but you can keep it nice and straight if you want to. And if you also wanted to add some more leaves up here, you could do the same thing. Right, and now you have two. And for this last one here, I'm going to make them about the same size as the stem is. So I'm going to start from the top and bring it down. Start from the top and bring it down. And then you can continue to choose which of the stems you want to add different leaf patterns to. So for this one, this curvy one here, maybe just going to add a few simple notches. And I'm just lightly pressing onto the paper and giving it a little curve with the brush as I go. Very, very simple brush stroke. Here I'm just going to darken up some of these lines. I'm not going to add anything to this one, but kind of looks like a cactus, that one. Let's see, over here, this one doesn't really have anything going on. So we're going to add some, maybe just some simple leaves at the bottom. Like so. Then I'm going to darken up this one up here, just so that it matches a little bit better. Okay, and now all of the plants in our garden have stems, and they also have leaves. I'm going to rinse my brush off in this pool of water that I have here, wipe it on a paper towel. That is off camera, sorry you can't see, I'm just wiping the paint off of my brush. So I have a clean brush to work with now, and we're going to go into the colors, my favorite part. So as you can see on the example, we have, a few different colors. I stuck to red, oranges, and a little bit of purple. I think I have one blue flower on there. And you can choose any colors that you really like. If you want to stick to the same color pattern, you can. If you want to test out a few different colors, you can as well. For the colors, I'm going to use a separate pool of water just to help keep it a little bit cleaner. And pour some water out. Don't really need this anymore. Okay. So to start, I'm just going to dip my brush into some water, and I'm going to start off with a red. And I'm just going to dip my brush in, going in with some water to release that color pigment. And I'm going to start with this plant over here. And very similar to the leaves, I'm going to create little notches. Now these aren't going to have definite shapes, right? They're going to kind of look like maybe little squares or little circles, but when you add enough of them, it's going to end up looking like a flower, which looks pretty cool to me. So I just push very lightly onto the paper and create these little notches up and down the stem. And at the top. We're going to let that dry a little bit, and we will go back and add some more to make it a little bit bigger. But while that's drying, we can do a few other flowers. So you can do some the same way if you want. You can also do some different shapes. So I like, for this one here, I'm going to add kind of like little berries. So it's just going to be like little dots. Randomly throughout this one here. Kind of looks like a Christmas tree plant with the red and green. with those coming in clear. A lot of fun. And I also like playing around with different designs. I still have a little bit of red paint on my brush, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to just get some water on it, make it a little bit lighter, and I'm going to create a rose-looking shape for this plant over here. I'm going to do that by first creating a curved line, like so. So it's a small curved line. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, kind of like I'm drawing two parentheses. Maybe this is more like a tulip. Tulip might be a better way to describe it. So I have these two little parentheses. I'm going to go into a little bit more of the red to make it darker. Get some other shades in there. And I'm just continuing to add those same curved line movements. And I'm going to leave that there and actually pause it for just, let it dry for a second because there's a little bit of water and I don't want the colors to mix too heavily. So I rinsed my brush off and wiped it off, and I'm going to go into some water and a new color. The next color I'm going to try out is going to be purple. So I'm dipping my brush into this purple color to pick up some of the pigment. And I'm going to start over here, and I'm going to create what looks kind of like a bouquet on top. I'm trying to make sure it's not too dark. So I'm going to start with the lighter shade first and kind of just drawing little wet dots in a circular fashion. And I'm going to leave it. And what we're going to do is slowly fill in the spaces. If you want, you can even create like little V's. I'll actually do that maybe over here. I'll create little V's on the ends of these with my purple. That way you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So I just use my brush and draw out a little V. And it ends up looking kind of like, I don't know what it's called, maybe one of those like bell flowers, where there could be something in the center, but I think it looks kind of cool. And I'm going to do that all over. So I'm just making these really short V shapes. And I'm keeping it a little bit lighter, so I'm just going to go in with some water, that way the shade isn't too dark. And that way after it dries, I can add on a darker shade over top. And it ends up looking pretty cool with the different shade values. I think I'm also going to use purple for this plant over here, and I'm going to do kind of like a star looking flower. Maybe one of the, like a flower that you're used to. So I'm going to create a petal, and I'm just drawing two curved lines to create that petal shape, and I'm going to repeat that process all over or until I cover areas that can be seen. Looks like that. Going back in and darkening up some of these. I'm going to rinse my brush off one more time. I'm going to come back to all of these colors, but I want them to dry a little bit first. And the last color I'm going to be using will be blue. I'm actually going to go for a darker blue. It's a little bit more fun to play with, in my opinion. And I'm going to add blue plants here and here. For this one, it's going to just be a very tiny one, maybe another tulip looking flower. So I created that U shape, or like the curved parentheses look, and I'm going to leave that to dry. And over here, I'm going to recreate the V effect, but I'm going to do it a little bit larger. I'm carefully trying to avoid that flower because it is still a little bit wet, so I don't want it to bleed into the other colors. Getting some more paint so that I can come out a little bit darker, and I'm going to add and I'm still just making this same V shape. There's little tiny V's all throughout to mimic a flower, a flowerish plant. And I'm going to go back over here as well. With my darker blue, just to add some lines and color to this plant, to that flower. It helps to give it a little bit of time to dry. This blue is actually drying fast because I didn't use too much water, so that is nice. And I can go in fairly easily to add in more V's. You'll see the first V's dried pretty light, so I can add more on top, and it looks like it's multicolor, but I've been using the same color. I'm actually going to use this blue and go into this plant over here, the purple one, and add in some blue dots to it. It's kind of like maybe a berry bush, which is cool. Now I'll rinse my brush off because I am done with blue. I'm going to be going back to my lovely purple paint. Getting a little bit of water, picking up some of that color, and touching up my V's on this one. So just adding some darker colored V's. Doing the same thing that I did with the blue, only with purple. I love that one. That one came out really nice. I really like that. And I'm also just going to go in and fill in the white spots in this flower over here. Then we'll be done with our purple. The last thing we'll want to do is go back to our red. So we have some red plants that aren't quite finished yet. And we will just pick up some more water and some more of that color. Do you want it to be a little bit darker? So not too much water. I'm going to finish up this tulip. If you want, you can draw like a little line so it looks like it's kind of opening on the sides. I'm going to come back over here and add, these are just plain, almost like very short dots or very short lines. Not quite V's, just one half of the V, right? See that one to add in some design. Coming back here as the paint dries. And I think I'm also going to add a little bit of spice to this one over here. Just adding some more dots around it so that it doesn't look so lonely and bare. There's no rhythm or rhyme to my dots. Just kind of want to give it a little bit of flair. And we'd be done with our garden. Of your work, clean my brush off, and we have our finished flower garden. I hope you all really enjoyed today's tutorial. I hope you were able to learn or try out something new or get back into watercolor painting if you have already found a passion for it. Thank you so much for joining